We hard cut to Gunn, knocking on the Fermani Manor door. There's a prolonged wait between the knock and any kind of further movement. The door creaks open to an eyeball with a light yellow dye. The pupil, wide and frantic, locks onto Gunn's face before darting back. Immediately after the door opens, as we see Arman Fermani. He stands in an oversized maroon suit rippled with dark stains along the collar and stomach. His low-hung sleeves are soaked, their black buttons tangled and popped like an old doll's linework skirt. His attire, however, was the least unsettling thing about him. Arman swings forward slightly, his back cracking and suit zipping, as he, with the strength of a cripple, grips the rim of an antique liquor. The motion gives Gunn a quick glimpse at his hands. They're lacerated in a soft pink and appear to have been carved with an exponential, duller harshness. They connect, these Nile-adjacent bloats, but not with precision nor consistency. Instead, every few inches, one glued globe will rip to the side and meet a noticeably more vicious blister before shifting in width, depth, or length. This pattern, if you could call it that, continued across Arman's entire top hand before vanishing up his sleeve. Did it go on? Did it end? Gunn could not tell, for this croaking man of judicial hinge danced in a fatty stout dress, while he, from the looks of his skin, presented only with the gravity of a feather. Gunn finally tilts his neck up to look Arman back in his piss-water eyes. Only when he does, a shutter shoots through him, temporarily snapping his half-lidded eyes open, even if his right, colourless marble is all but blind. The thing looking back at Gunn, to his absolute shock, appears closer to the dead than even he is. While Gunn's face was dirtied and sunken, Arman's was plastic and wet with a sweat that did not drip. Instead, it absorbed into small orbs that sat on his crooked, tampered sculpt. They hung to the thick, raised scalpel marks that now defined his once-aged face, these orbs exaggerating the severity of his shakily done lacerations, making them resemble a beehive's brood chamber, a trypophobian's nightmare. The sides of his head, meanwhile, were shaved down to the follicle, leaving them as these repugnant, misplaced barbs besides the multi-sensed stench of his face and thin, greasy wet scalp. This nest, toned like human roadkill, seemed to be thinning almost by the second, as if craving his every untouched patch of wrinkled skin. There was a part of Gunn that, even with how vastly incomparable the two were physically, could feel Kian's likeness, or perhaps an idea leaking from Arman's degraded form. Was it the suit? If Arman's was washed, better cared for, and attended to the same degree that Kian cared for his own tan suit, then the pair may very well have twinned like two sides of a sphere at the vicar's closed ball. Arman coughs, the sound straining like violin chords against a bronze string. Gunn, not looking away as he does so, shuts the manor's front door, shutting out the sounds of the wrathful night. "Where'd you learn to hate?" Arman coarsely asks, Pinky twitching against his bottle like a chime. Gunn's face hardens, his initial pity draining away as he finds that, even through whatever it is that possessed Arman, the legal vampire below still very much lives, at least according to his half-second spectation. "Did your father teach you? Your mother? It couldn't have been your heliophilian uncle, that's beyond a doubt. Did you even hate at all before you behold this nation's greatest instrument?" Arman probes, referring to the Heaven's Court. "I hate you, Verwandler. What do you make of that?" Arman almost performatively sneers, like a monkey with a broken music box. "Nothing special," Gunn whisperedly responds. Arman stares the boy down before snapping away, limping off from the manor's inner expanse as he trails down a wide, doorless hall, lit by overly insistent light bulbs. Gunn, after a moment, begins to hesitantly follow from behind. The look you had when you first came here, it nearly made me detest you as much as— Arman loosely explains, his snark fading as he takes long, exhausting exhales between every few words. Of us all, you're the least inside. Arman continues, appearing to be using Gunn as a stand-in for his entire Verwandler line. When gathering evidence, proof, and motive on the others, it's always so ideologically technical. It makes them easier to work with, which is the only positive, but it also makes them unbearably him. Arman goes on as Gunn intently listens. The moral of us never last long enough to breathe. They bicker, miscommunicate, fail, and lie for reasons they aren't even sure they believe in, yet they lie nonetheless. They hold themselves hand in hand even when they know there's no salvation in it. They don't plot, they plan, and that ruins me. So when the machine man came to me and asked for my aid in destroying you, I obliged, because there was no logic behind you. Arman continues as he takes a swig, spilling half of his bottle over his leather shoes in the process. I'd fought to uphold my position, the condemner and avoider, whereas you meandered and feuded among yourselves. You held a declared command over the social productions, but you swayed this nation not 1 inch in your direction. Such incompetence, such personality, such individual issue. How were you ever bestowed such power? The vicar was surely a fool to bless you, I'd assumed. How I wish he'd ended up the way I'd imagined him, Arman beatenly murmurs. You are engineered opposition, and as dearly as I now plead it to be a dream, there is only one true technician in this bastard's land. The law, the moral, and the loyal are all flimsy, subjective boundaries, easily directed by a written historical logic. And you, Verwandler, have been, to no fault of your own, born into a category the serpent is finding increasingly unnecessary in these angel-touched times, Arman depressedly reveals. Gunn, less surprised than Arman expected, only burns a hole through Arman's bony back, his lungs still and silent. That's why I hate you, because you were blessed through ignorance, bliss even. And when I sit by the fire with a glass of bled grapes, I understand that to have been killed for what appears as cruelty is a fate impossibly superior than a known, slow, and unremarkable gavel-marked expiration. I'm no gavel-holder, no father, and least of all a man. I am produced and shamefully mortal in my aspirations. Lucan was the last remnant of soul in this family, and he was taken by a soulless husk that I judged worthy. If I had held Kian by the door and shipped Anabarbarus back to his wiry chasm, then I may not have ended up drinking alone tonight. Arman cries, doing his best to hide his sniffling. So Verwandler, how about a drink? Arman asks, as he reaches a dead end and shakily lifts his bottle in Gunn's direction. Gunn's expression finally changes as he frowns. It's empty, he coolly replies. Arman lifts the bottle up to his face as he inspects. You're a fool, I can see he argues before the bottle slips from his grip and shatters on the carpet, splattering alcohol over Gunn's shoes and pants. The two stand in what many would call an awkward silence, but in reality there was no off-putting limerence, only a harsh setting in the situation. Don't go, there really is nothing of worth waiting for you, Arman calmly states, breaking the silence in reference to Kian, who he knows is Gunn's reason for being here. I don't want to be like you, Gunn replies, that strong, almost heat-shattering resistance showing its vile face once again. While it was tainted, informed, and leashed by Kian, the primal version of that potency, that resistance, had nothing to do with the Farmani prince. That rebellion, centuries ago, had come from a people who were suppressed, unrewarded, and cast aside by a newborn superpower whom had, much like Kian, used them for their own devilish benefit. The Verwandlers were not originally appointed social ministries because of some future plot for power, but because when the Union had first turned its head from those who would flee to Mishirami, the Verwandlers were the ones who pointed up at the vicar and declared him mighty. If so, then leave this house and die. You still fail in the way of knowing planetary despair, so go. Go off and die at the hook with your freedom in flourish. Die believing in a potential that never existed. Die, 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 die. Arman sobs, falling to the floor as his face lies in a puddle of alcohol. The difference between tears and booze, much like Arman's human will, had never gone past a conceptual paradise. Downstairs. He's downstairs. Do us all a favor and kill him, Arman concludes as he rubs his arms, thinking back to a young Kian who had looked no different than he. Why didn't he just let the boy die when he'd come out of the womb so shamefully malformed? Perhaps, at some long-gone point, Arman had yearned for something chaotic and illogical of his own, something like Kian Farmani.
Hello, I would like to thank you for tuning in. There unfortunately were some issues with the AI kind of mispronouncing words or kind of saying sentences in ways they weren't really written. So I do apologize for that, but I hope the experience still kind of managed to convey what Book 4, Divine Machinery, is kind of going for right now. So I appreciate you tuning in and expect much more in the future.